An Evening at the Movies is a proud member of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network. Other shows in the network include Mass Debaters, The Sip List, Crushgasm, Love is Black, Men Are the Prize, Crime Rewind, and Literature Reapers. You can find out all about our shows and more at idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com. Happy listening. You are now entering the world of a movie review. A world full of drama, joy, ridicule, movie spoilers, unpopular opinions, and adult humor for as far as the eye can see. Welcome to An Evening at the Movies.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome back to your favorite movie-based podcast, where we sit down and we discuss all of our favorite movies and why we love them. But before we can do that, we also have to have the stale popcorn and the watered down sodas too, because I screwed up my intro already, and that's just how we're gonna. So, watered down sodas, stale popcorn, and discuss all of our favorite movies and why we love them. You would think after 200 some odd episodes I would have this down, but evidently I don't. But I digress. After I introduce the guest that we have with us this week, I will share the good news that I have for everybody who may or may not know what is very special about today as well. But we are joined by somebody making her debut on An Evening at the Movies today. We are joined by Agni.
Hello, yes, Agni Hogaboom here in beautiful Aberdeen, Washington.
Well, I mean, it is beautiful Aberdeen, Washington. It's where I grew up, so you know.
Yeah.
So, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and let them know some interesting facts about you and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so my name's Agni. I also live in Aberdeen, so it's been cool to meet up with Kasey. I actually think, Kasey, you went to high school with my husband, I believe.
I did.
Yeah, so I grew up without a television, and my parents would occasionally rent a whole ass VCR, and we would get to, like, they wouldn't just rent the VHS, they'd rent the VCR. And that kind of cemented my love of film, because it was such a special thing to get to watch a movie. And I do lean towards horror films, like, to the extent that if you look at my letterbox, it's like 98% horror. So I also love classic films. I already recorded another podcast with someone across the pond in the UK today, and we talked about The Long Good Friday in 1980, which is an actual good film. So I'm not just a B-movie person. I have a website called bmoviebffs.com, and I co-host a podcast called Beauty Beast and the Bees. That's bbnbs.net. So I'm no stranger to podcasting and no stranger to B-movies, but I do occasionally watch actual good movies too, just to, be clear.
Well, I mean, there's nothing horribly bad about a B movie per se. It just, the way I look at it, it just did not get the attention from mainstream Hollywood that your normal blockbusters and things of that nature got. So
yeah,
but B movies can be just as great, if not greater, than the cheesy, overdone, blow them up superhero. There's nothing wrong with all of that, but at the same time, the movie we're discussing today, though, it doesn't necessarily have all the blow em ups and the all of that. It's a very simply done movie. But I digress. Before we reveal what movie we'll be discussing, though, I do want to announce to the world that your boy, the host of An Evening at the Movies, will be stepping back from 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, hosting An Evening at the Movies, because that's what I've been doing since I got laid off. But starting Monday, I will be going back to work and starting orientation. So
wow,
I have a job.
Congratulations.
And thank you very much. I'm excited to actually be making a full paycheck and not a partial paycheck mandated by the state of Washington.
Right on. That's big news.
Otherwise known as unemployment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been there. We were on unemployment for a year. So congratulations, Kasey. That's really cool.
It's been a stressful few months, but I'm definitely excited to be back out there, and I'm excited to share that good news with everybody. So, yay, back out into the workforce Monday morning, bright and early.
Wow.
I don't know if I'm going to be ready to be up that early in the morning, but I digress. So, we are going to be discussing, though, a incredible movie known to the world as Sleepaway Camp today. So, uh, before we can get into the discussion, though, as we all know, there are a little bit of facts and figures that I'd like to share with the listeners about the movie that we're discussing. So, in case you don't know, um, and shame on you for not knowing because this is a great movie that everybody should see once in their lifetime. Uh, Sleepaway Camp released on November 18th, 1983. It was directed by Robert Hiltzik, was distributed by United Film Distribution, had a $350,000 budget, and made $11 million at the box office, and has a 81% score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 61% on their audience meter. So, um, very mixed reviews, I guess you could say, on Rotten Tomatoes. But on an evening at the movies, we do not fully support the corporate juggernaut that is Rotten Tomatoes, and we so lovingly say, "Fuck you, Rotten Tomatoes."
Fair enough.
So, also, if you haven't seen the movie um, and want to put a pin in listening to the episode and go watch it and come back and listen to the episode when you're done, because we always encourage you to come back and not forget about us. But you can find it on Peacock, Tubi, Plex, and it's available on multiple other apps to rent as well. So, yay! So all of
Widely
that aside,
available.
and yes, um, and if you want to be a rebel and not watch it but still listen to the episode, that's fine. That's on you. Hashtag spoilers abound because the movie's 41 years old, and we're not going to hold back just because you haven't seen the movie in 41 years. So, but I will tell you this: secrets and treachery abound as a youth summer camp opens. But alas, moment by moment, the body count um, rises. That's going to be your brief plot summary for what we'll be discussing for the movie as well. So, what about the movie really captured your attention as a viewer the first time you saw the movie?
Well, I sort of knew the film by reputation before I saw it. It has like a really like horrifically transphobic like twist ending that is totally notorious. I didn't hear that it was a good film. It was more like a notorious film. And for some reason,
Mm.
I decided to watch it anyway. And to my surprise, I really actually liked it a lot, problematic content notwithstanding. Um, it's definitely one of those like camp slashers. Yeah, in fact, I think when it first came out, it was kind of like accused of ripping off, Friday the 13th. I actually think it's like a better
Yeah.
film, to be honest. It's very it's very earnestly made. Like the people that made
Mm.
Sleepaway Camp truly believe they were making a good film. They were not trying to make a campy film, but they did accidentally make a film that is so campy it is almost surreal. And that is one of the things I like about it. It's just so like drenched in camper slasher. And by the way, also I gotta say, special effects are excellent and they still look really good. And I'm a big practical effects horror person, and I love the horror
Hmm.
effects in this film.
I will 100% second that sentiment as well because to me, the effects in horror movies that tend to get me the most are the practical effects.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't need all the over the top, mind blowing CGI, all of that. I mean, at times that kind of stuff is enjoyable to see, but I'll even venture into like the sci-fi world. Like I grew what like, one of the very first movies I ever saw in the movie theater was the original Star Wars movie.
Mhm.
Again, not a CGI effect movie. It was very practically done with practical effects and all of that. So I grew up to appreciate things of that nature because back in the 80s and well, most of the 90s, you didn't have all the over the top, blown up,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, special effects that you have nowadays. So,
Yeah, I favor practical effects over CGI, and I think most horror fans do, to be honest. Most of us wanna see practical
mhm,
effects, and I do think that there is an opportunity to augment practical effects with CGI, like, the Fury Road did a good job with that, right? Mad Max Fury Road,
yeah.
mostly practical effects, and they did a little augmentation. So, that's kinda what I like to see, and I know we're like, most horror fans are gonna say practical effects all the way, and I'm just sort of surprised how good Sleepaway Camp's practical effects are because like the script isn't good. Like there's a lot of it that's not good, but the special effects are still excellent.
Well, with that, yeah. One of my next questions is going to be um, if there was anything specifically about the movie that turned you off, for lack of a better term. But before we get to that, though, I mean, I second everything that you said. Though, I mean, the practical effects in this movie are wow, and I think they do, like you said, hold up over. It's been 41 years since this movie came out, almost.
Mm,
Well,
mm,
41 years in November,
wow.
and it's still like uh, one of the things that captured my attention was like um, the the cook at the camp when he gets the big pot of water dumped over him. The yeah, pervert. There was a lot of perverts that work at this camp, by the way. I'm
Well,
just gonna
the
throw that out
that's
there.
yeah, I mean, the first dialogue you hear after the first scene, which sort of sets up the premise, and then we go to the actual camp, the first bit of dialogue on the camp is the cook who's probably 30 years old, and he's talking pretty explicitly sexually about the young children that are running out of the bus, and there's 4 other guys standing there, and they all kinda laugh it off. It's just it's sort of shocking how that is in a film, and I don't know. But yes, the cook, he gets burned in a pretty comical way, if you ask me. Because how
Yeah,
can I ask you, Casey, how are they gonna get all that corn out of that pot? How are they gonna do that? I could not un
I have. That pot literally was
They're like
like
6 foot tall. Yeah.
yeah, because like he had to climb up on
Yeah, the stool to,
a
look
chair
at it.
to be able to get the corn in the pot, and then you know, again, spoiler alert. Um, well, we won't get to revealing who to kill, but the killer, you know, pushes him from behind and causes him to lean over the
Yeah.
pot, and then pulls the chair out from underneath him so that he has to fall backwards and
Which
pull.
he as he falls, he makes sure to pull the pot on top of him and scald himself, and I think what you're
Mhm.
gonna say is the effects look so good, like, his burns are really
They,
gnarly
they
looking.
look legitimately like burns.
Yes, they do, and the camera
Not.
stays on him while he's screaming and screaming, and the score is really loud, like, the score of this film is really
Mhm.
invasive and in a good way. Yeah, pretty that's our first bit of, true gore, is that moment right there.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Is like the sound effects on my Blu-ray are very much amplified because, like, after we set up this recording, I that very first night I put the DVD or the Blu-ray in and watched it, and I'm not gonna lie, it was late. I fell asleep in the middle of the movie, but when the credits got done and it went back to the main menu, and that loud, loud, loud music. I literally woke like
I bet. Yeah.
sitting straight up out of bed. It was like no, 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 like
Yeah.
trying to find the remote to turn it off because it was loud and it
Yeah.
scared the crap out of me. But yeah, like that effect really resonated with me. The when the Meg gets stabbed in the shower and she falls out of the shower and gets discovered, the big gash down her back from her shoulder blades all the way down her back looks legitimately real.
Yeah.
Like so, I mean,
And the canoe victim was probably the
mhm,
second bit of gore, and he looks really good, and there's, like, a snake that crawls out of his mouth, totally shocking, right? Like, it's a real snake, and that
yeah,
obviously, that was, like, a fake head, but it looked really good, although it was very comically his face was all tore up, which is kind of weird. I'm not sure why that happened because he was drowned. And yeah, I mean, there's problems with the film. I mean, like you mentioned Meg getting stabbed. She kind of just helpfully like leans against the shower while she's being stabbed. I mean, most people would probably like jump forward. So, there's a lot. And like the scene where the guy gets
I mean,
drowned, he's like
I
easy
would.
to drown. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the kills are kind of
But I
funny,
mean, that's
but
kind of
they're gnarly.
well, that's kind of sort of a horror trope though too. Is like the characters are always doing the exact opposite of what they should be doing. Like
Yeah.
if you go back and watch, I think it was yeah, it was the original Scream movie where Nev Campbell's talking about. There's always some big-breasted blonde running up the stairs when she should be running out the front door.
Right.
You know, prime example. If you're in the shower and you feel a knife ripping through the wall into your back, probably not a good idea to lean further back into the wall.
Yeah.
Just saying.
But also the drowning scene is so funny because the guy is under a canoe, and another
Mhm.
person, you can't tell who it is yet, pops up, and they just sort of push his head under the water, and I feel like probably that wouldn't work, you'd probably grab the hands of your assailant and struggle to the surface,
Yeah, I'm
but
not
still,
gonna
like you
lie. I'd
say,
put up a lot more of a fight than he did.
yeah, he just kinda by the way, I just wanna shout out the fashion in this film. We have some pretty awesome early '80s fashion in this movie. Like, I
Oh
took
yeah,
multiple screenshots of lots of guys in crop tops and tiny shorts. It was pretty funny.
yeah. If you go back and watch this movie and you were not of the era, that is how we dressed back then,
Yeah. Mesh
boys and
mesh
girls.
yeah, crop tops and knee-high socks, yeah.
Crop tops, mesh, skin tight jeans,
Yes.
all of it.
There's also a lot of just hostility. All the campers are constantly, like, screaming, cussing at each other. It's just, like, the most hostile
Ricky,
energy. Ricky, the cousin.
every other word out of Ricky's mouth was f
Yeah.
bombs.
Yep.
I mean, I growing up, I think the first time I saw somebody abuse the f bombs was probably Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills
Uh,
Cop, and I thought that was a personal record. Oh no, I think Ricky freaking broke that record
yeah,
in.
Ricky breaks that record. Yeah, language has really changed because I remember a Beverly Hills Cop, and it was so shocking. That language alone got the film an R rating, right? And now we
Mhm.
hear that language, kinda anywhere. So that has definitely changed.
Well, I mean, you did that was, and I've talked to several people before on the show about it, but that's one of those things where one of the other shows I'm on, season to season, where we talk about a TV show in its entirety, and we're getting ready to next week talk about the FX show Sons of Anarchy,
Okay.
and there the amount of language and stuff that you see on the screen in that show, you would not have been caught dead getting that on ABC, NBC, and CBS
Yep.
when you and I were kids.
That's totally true. Things have
I
changed.
mean, There was no bare asses. There was no whatevers. You didn't hear f bombs. If you heard "damn" on one of the big three networks, that was like,
Yeah. Yep. That's changed. But Sleepaway Camp, yep, tons of raunchy language and just sort of violent language, like threats, and everyone's just hostile. There's something in the water. Like everyone's totally aggravated.
yeah. Well, I think one of the things also that I appreciated too, like, um, I think it was the first social that they had at the common room or
Right.
whatever, where the one group of guys come up and they're, you know, pushing Angela's buttons,
Hmm.
and her cousin slash brother slash whatever you want to refer to him as literally comes to her defense, and Ricky, for lack of a better term, uh, f bombs galore while he's getting in these people's faces, and they end up rolling around on the floor throwing punches at each other. I've seen fight sequences like that before that can come across as looking very cheesy and overdone. Where to me, as being a kid growing up in the 80s, I remember, you know, getting in fights with people and, rolling around on the ground and punching and all of that. Like, and it looked a lot
Yeah.
like what that did.
Yeah. It was like a
So,
rugby scrum.
you know,
Yeah.
definitely hats off to the actors and, well, Robert for creating that environment and having that look as authentic as it did, because you don't always get that in movies, especially, again, for lack of a better term, your B level movies. They don't always get the attention because they don't get the budget and all of that and the time from the studio that,
Hmm.
your big Marvel or DC or whatever tends to get, where they can take their time and make sure that they quote unquote do it right. So, so yeah, I mean, realistically, was there anything about the movie that you absolutely couldn't stand?
Couldn't stand. I
Yeah,
guess. I mean,
like
it's.
negative.
I mean, the final twist is pretty rough considering the climate that we live in right now politically and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, but it's definitely just one of those shocker slasher films, and so you with those films, there's always a lot of usually, sorry, there's usually a lot of homophobia, sexism, transphobia. Um,
Yeah,
but I feel like that you're getting that if you're going to watch a camp slasher, right? Like who's watching those,
yeah.
um, kind of unaware of that. I personally never found the Friday the 13th films very good. Like the only one I like is, I think it's, I can remember who's in it. Is it the sixth one? I think that's the only Friday the 13th that I like. Make sure I've
Yeah,
got
I'm
the.
not gonna. I can probably
Yeah,
count on one hand how many Friday the 13th movies I actually love, and there's a reason why we haven't talked a whole lot about Friday the 13th on
yeah.
When You Bring It to Movies, and that's because they're guilty of false advertisement like a son of a bitch.
How
Because
so?
well, I come back to the whole Friday the 13th Part 8 is always my argument, because that's the one where it is Friday the 13th Part 8. Jason takes Manhattan. Oh no, that movie
He's
should have been named Friday the 13th Part 8. Jason travels to Manhattan on a boat,
Yeah,
and
he's
then
on a
for
boat.
5 minutes at the end of the movie, tries to take over Manhattan before he gets killed.
Yeah, there's like
I know
one
it's kind of
scene.
long, but
Yeah, there's one scene in Times Square, and the rest of it's clearly in some Canadian town somewhere. And yeah, most of it's on a boat. I just
yeah,
like just because I watch horror. This is one thing with horror fans. If you say that you're a horror fan, people think you like every horror movie, and that's just not
mm,
true. There's so much crappy horror out there, and the camp slasher genre, I've never liked it much. It's usually formulaic. It's not actually scary. So yeah, I feel like Sleepaway Camp's better than any Friday the 13th film for sure.
Yeah, I I can appreciate the fact because for me growing up as a kid, uh, I saw later Friday the 13th movies in the franchise,
Mm,
so I was introduced to Jason
sure.
before I watched the original.
Hmm.
So to me, as a fourth grade, fifth grade age kid, in early double digit years, the fact that I'm watching the original Friday the 13th, and body after body gets killed by a mysterious entity, and it's like, okay, well, it's the first movie. Eventually, we're going to get to the Jason reveal, and
Right.
blah 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 blah. And then you get to the end of the movie. Spoiler alert! Again. Everybody knows this. If you're a horror movie fan, you know this one, so I'm not
Yes.
feeling guilty about it. But yeah, to have his mom,
And
and then
she's played by an actress who, up until that point, had been a TV actress, always played these sort of
mhm,
nurturing or fun roles. And so having her play this, evil killer was kind of cool. But you and I are young enough that we kind of knew the twist before we saw the film. So we don't know what it would have felt like
mhm.
to go into that film cold. So same with like Psycho,
Oh no,
right?
because
I knew
that
the
movie,
twist of Psycho
yeah,
before I ever saw Psycho, right? Which is kind of a bummer.
yeah, same thing. Like when Friday the 13th came out, that was what 1980. I would have been, depending upon when it came out, 3 years old.
Yeah.
There's no way in the hell my mother was taking me to the movie theater to
Yeah.
see Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, by the time I saw my first Friday film, it was already starting to get pretty campy, right? So, yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say it was late grade school when I saw my first one, and I'm thinking it was along the lines of part seven, part
Mhm.
six, part seven.
Yeah. Same.
So
I was also
I
more of a Freddy Krueger and a Michael Myers person too, so
see you will fit in perfectly on coming back on the show because, like, I, Amanda, my co-host, and I have gotten into many heated debates over this as to which one is number one and number two in the slasher
okay.
lore. Um, she is 100% a John Carpenter girl, even to the effect that last year she got to go get an autograph from him and got to meet PJ Souls on top of it.
Nice.
Both of them, believe it or not, actually were wearing their same Linda shirt that says totally across the front.
Oh, nice.
So, but I fall under the Nightmare on Elm Street category as being my favorite all time. We don't, it can get heated between the two of us as to which one's better. I don't particularly, and I know she doesn't particularly hate on the other one,
Yeah.
but you know, there's definitely merits for John Carpenter and Wes Craven are
Yeah. They're both
amazingly
amazing. Yeah,
directed.
and they've also both put out some bad films too. Not everything they've
Oh,
touched has been golden. So, yeah.
yeah, just because I, well, I mean, some of the quote unquote all time greatest actors of all time. I mean, most people, if you were to poll 100 people downtown Aberdeen, if you ask them who the greatest actor of all time is, most of them will probably tell you Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks has had crappy performances before in a movie.
Yeah, like in the Elvis movie that just came out.
So
Yeah.
I can confirm nor deny. Um, More than likely, that will be coming up not too far down the road, and yeah, it's one of those weird entities. But I can definitely understand though, as far as getting back on track with Sleepaway Camp, though, um, where especially in the era that we grew up in, where things were talked about and handled in a lot different manner than hopefully we're evolving to a better level nowadays. So, I mean, it's still not 100% great by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we're developing new understandings and things are slowly getting better, hopefully, knock on wood.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? Because yes, in some ways things are getting better, but like right now, as of today, there are 518 anti-trans bills in 41 of our states. So yeah, like in some ways, I will say that I was gonna ask you what age you started watching these films because as a horror fan, I definitely was watching some of these films way too young. We'd go to a
Oh
friend's
yeah.
house where there wasn't a lot of supervision, right? And we would watch I grew up on like Tales from the Crypt. I watched it at my friend's house because her mom had cable, and um, I'm kind of Nightmare on Elm Street person because we watched those when I was really little, and they were
Hmm.
genuinely scary to me as a kid. Now I watch them and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not scary. But um, whereas I didn't become a fan of John Carpenter until I was in my early 20s. So part of it is like how you grew up and what you grew up with. One of my favorite films is
Hmm.
Silence of the Lambs, right? And it's got some
Yeah.
problematic content in it as well. So um, there's a really cool series on Shudder called Queer for Fear that talks about like LGBTQ representation in
Hmm.
horror films. It's a really good watch, um, and especially like if you're in the LGBTQ community, like you still have the right to enjoying horror, right? Even if there's a lot of really problematic stuff in it. But the Sleepaway Camp, I think I like it for a lot of factors. One is like I genuinely think they were trying to make a serious film and
Hmm.
they were very earnest about it, and it's almost surreal. It's an almost surreal film just because it feels so intense. Like everyone
Hmm.
is always on like rage level 11. um the score, we've talked about the score, it's like loud and invasive. The special effects are good, and it doesn't really drag. The story like clips along. You're not bored at any point. So honestly, like
That's one of the beautiful things about it, though, is like literally the running time for this movie is like an hour and 24 minutes,
yeah, it just kind of,
which,
yep.
if you know movies from when we were kids, you most movies averaged, an hour and a half to an hour and
Yeah,
40 minutes back then.
yeah,
So going a movie going an hour and 24 minutes, that's not that long of a time
no.
at all. And
I also favor
they
hour
cover
and
a
a half.
lot.
Yeah,
They cover a lot, and it moves at a good steady clip all the way through from
yep.
point A to point B.
Yeah, I like a 90-minute film, to be honest. We're kind of in the era of like 3-hour long films right now. And I some of them are good, but I kind of like a story that tells the story, gets to it, and you're not still sitting in the theater, 3 hours later. How long? I liked the Batman, but wasn't that film like 4 hours long? Like I mean, geez, they could have clipped it and made it into two films.
The one with the
Yeah.
sparkling vampire.
No, no, yes,
Yeah,
yeah. It was
Robert
only 3 hours.
Pattinson.
Sorry, it's only 3 hours long, but it's just like I don't
It
know. There's
felt
like
like four. I'm sorry.
I agree. Like I
I
liked the film, but it was too long. It was just too long. They didn't need 40 minutes of that film.
I I won't shame, parts of the state that I live in, but again, there's a reason why his main movie franchise has not been discussed on an evening at the movies because vampires don't shimmer in the sunlight.
Mm. So what's your favorite vampire film then?
I mean, I like the classic um, Universal Dracula.
Bela Lugosi. Uh-huh.
Believe it or not, with a few exceptions, I like the Francis Ford Coppola remake with Gary Oldman as
Yeah.
Dracula.
It's fun. Yeah.
As far as the off-center stuff, I mean, like I love the Lost Boys. I grew up in that era with the two Coreys and Kiefer Sutherland
Yeah.
and all of that. So that that movie really grabbed my attention. Um, 30 Days of Night, I think, is an interesting graphic novel as well as a movie as well. Um, I for me, Twilight just hit on different level that I just really couldn't get behind.
Yeah.
Like the first movie was okay. As a grown ass man, I think in my 30s when I saw the movies in the movie theater, though, I felt weird going to a movie and watching half naked teenagers running around in the woods with their shirts off.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be a little bit of an over the top metaphor, but it just it felt weird to me.
Yeah,
So I mean,
totally. Well, I hate
as always,
Twilight, hated the books, hated the movies, but it is interesting that both Robert Pattinson and Kirsten Stewart are actually good actors. They've gone on to prove that they're capable of, and I'm glad that Twilight is not their only legacy because,
it very well could have been the end of their career, though, too.
yeah,
At the same
yeah,
time,
yeah,
I mean,
maybe
not judging, but I, yeah, I think,
made lots of money though.
oh, yeah, their pockets, yeah, they made to scratch.
Hmm.
So,
Can I just point out one of my favorite moments in Sleepaway Camp is when the deputy shows back up with his fake mustache. Like that is so funny because the camera, like I actually posted it on Instagram last night in my stories because the camera lingers on his face and he has the most, like it looks like he bought it out of one of those 25-cent like vending machines. It's such a bad fake mustache. Like clearly the actor had shaved at some point and they wouldn't wait for him to grow one back or whatever. It's the second worst mustache shenanigan after the Henry Cavill Superman problems. It's pretty funny.
oh my god, yeah. I mean, I would guess more than likely his initial stuff was all done early in the shoot, and he had to come back in to
Yeah.
pick up a shot here and there. And like you said, they probably couldn't wait for him
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
you know, grow the full on one back. So it's like, here, have freaking.
But then
It's
why
not that
why
bad, but
show a
have a
close-up?
Yosemite Sam
Yeah, but why
mustache.
did they have a close-up scene of his face? Like it like lingers and you're laughing. It's so bad. It's so fake looking. Has to be seen to be believed.
There's definitely elements of this movie that, for lack of a better term, can come across fake or even cringy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, the whole Meg and Mel
Oh my
relationship
gosh. I
thing.
forgot. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know how old dude was when they made this movie. I know I read online that this was the last movie he made before he passed away.
Yeah, he was 60 something and he died of lung cancer, I think.
So,
Yeah, so he
so,
was about 60 years old. Yeah.
so he's
And
like 60 years old, and he's trying to get in the pants of a late teen, early 20-year
yeah,
old
she would have
woman.
been like 19. But what's funny, Casey, is she has the hots for him. Like he's not even that
He is
interested
that
in,
too.
she is like all into this guy, and he's not just old, he's really goofy looking. He wears like the plaid polyester pants and she's this young, beautiful girl, and that was so strange. That was odd. Yeah.
It felt awkward, for lack of a better term, awkward as fuck.
And can I just point out that Judy is one of my favorite horror movie bitches of all time because she is just full of so much hate, like so much hate the whole film. She is so mean.
Oh, the one from this movie?
Yeah, she has like the long side ponytail. She actually wears a shirt at one point that says Judy on it, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She seems like she's always in a perma bad mood.
She's hardly done any she's only been in this film, Sleepaway Camp, and then it looks like there was a project in 2014 where she's in a short film follow-up to Sleepaway Camp. That's so funny. Like, but she basically didn't do much work except Judy, and I have a soft spot for her as Judy. Did you watch any of the other Sleepaway Camp films? I think there are 3 sequels.
I have not yet. I actually have all of them on Blu-ray.
Nice.
It's one of those ones where I can watch and appreciate this movie, but I'm also not naive enough to know that um, this movie may not necessarily be as amazing as you would think. And normally, when you have the bar set at a certain level by an original movie, any sequels that come after just
True. Yeah.
get worse and worse. And it's like, I don't know if I want to tarnish this movie's legacy, in my opinion, by watching these other movies, because it has happened before where a sequel is outdone and been better than the original. It doesn't happen very often, let's be honest.
Nope.
I could probably count on one, maybe two hands how many times that I would recognize a sequel as being better than the original.
Especially with horror. Horror almost always goes downhill.
Yeah, and being in the era that we are right now, with everything in the world getting a remake, it's like, okay, if you're gonna do it, but bring something new to the table.
Hmm.
Don't just carbon copy, spit out the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know that there are people on both sides of the fence on even like the Rob Zombie Halloween remake,
Hmm.
where people are like, he disrespected the franchise, blah 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 blah. And then you have people where, well, he went deeper into the backstory and what helped make Michael Myers. But you know, to each their own, and people can either get behind or don't get behind whether or not that movie was quality or not. I personally didn't necessarily care for it. I like the idea of having mystery behind the origin of why Michael Myers is the way he
Yeah.
is. So, which is kind of sort of along the same lines of what John Carpenter was going for
Yeah.
when
It was not
he
supposed to be
wrote the movie.
explained. Yeah.
Yeah. So I for at a certain amount of time, mystery adds a little bit of nuance to that's what even like Jaws per se. You don't get slapped in the face over and over again for the better part of 2 hours with images of the shark and all of that. It's all psychologically
Yeah.
done by Spielberg as he's doing this, that, and the other thing, and then all of a sudden, bam! At the end of the movie, 10 minutes before the open or the credits roll, that's when you finally get to actually see the shark actually do something. So
Yeah.
you got to sit down and invest your whole 2 hours into watching this movie before you actually get slapped in the face with any kind of horrific gore in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, horror is hard, because we're right now in kind of a horror renaissance, and one of the most popular directors out there is Mike Flanagan, and I think he's a skilled director in a lot of ways, but he uses an awful lot of jump scares, and I mean just jump scare after jump scare after jump scare, and it's like, there's a place for that, but when you've got a movie or a TV series where there's multiple jump scares, I start to feel like, hey, you don't know how to write a scary story, so you're just going to do a really loud noise and a loud visual, So,
yeah, which there is something to the whole psychological element of the jump scare that directors like John Carpenter knew what they were doing, or
mhm.
Wes Craven knew what he was doing, even to the same extent, not even directly linked to like Nightmare on Elm Street, but even with Scream, when Wes made those movies that he did as well. Yeah, you kind of sort of knew what was coming beat by beat, but at the same time, it wasn't necessarily over the top. You know, there was still some kind of mystery to it. So,
Yeah.
but yes, no, Mike Flanagan, Oh, chef kiss.
You like his
I love.
stuff? Oh,
Oh well, okay. So my one opinion I have on Mike Flanagan is, um, for people, obviously, longtime listeners of the show know that I also love reading big time, and I'm also a hardcore Stephen King fan. And I've said numerous times, and I'll die on this hill, that there are three, maybe four people who have done a amazing adaptation of a Stephen King book. Um, Rob Reiner, Frank Darabont, uh, possibly uh, Brian De Palma when he did Carrie,
Carrie. Hmm.
and then number four is Mike Flanagan.
Gotcha.
I love how dedicated he is to the fact that he is 100% tried and true, adamant that he will, at some point, bring his vision for the Dark Tower series that Stephen King wrote
Yeah.
to the screen and do a correct adaptation that wasn't what we got 7 years ago.
Yeah, that was pretty rough. That was pretty boring. I'm not a Stephen King fan, but I did read The Dark Tower, and I do think there's some good potential there for a film, and I do think that what we got was pretty bad.
Yeah. So definitely 100%. Um, I think Mike Flanagan might be this generation's version potentially of our generation's John Carpenter or Wes Craven. I think he's got that kind of talent, in my own personal opinion.
Well, I think he loves the the source material, and that does come through, although I'm not a big Mike Flanagan fan. I did like House of Usher more than I thought I would. And like
Yeah.
it was kind of cool. I felt like it kind of stuck the landing, but horror is a hard to do well. I'm a big fan of a lot of the stuff coming out of A24. I like Ari Aster an awful lot. Like those, I like the kind of horror that is just genuinely upsetting, where you're like upset for 2 days after you watch it.
Yeah. I had never, up until last summer, seen an A24 movie
Mm.
in my entire life until Harvey, one of the other hosts of one of the shows in the network that we're in, recommended a movie, because that's the one thing about an evening at the movies is we have the rule that if you recommend a movie, it will go on the schedule and it will get done. He brought a very twisted movie to my attention called Midsummer,
Mhm.
and do you,
I loved it. I loved it.
it, oh, I absolutely 100% loved it and spoke very well of it when we discussed it last summer. Um, I'm not gonna lie, there were elements of it that can make your skin crawl or make you feel uncomfortable. But I think that's where the beauty in the horror genre is, though.
Mm.
If you can take those things and do what you do and create a story and still make a lifelong horror fan like myself or yourself or whoever and still make them feel uncomfortable and make their skin crawl, then
Yeah,
that's the talent. That's the mark of a true talented movie director
I
slash horror
agree.
movie director.
Yeah. It's funny because I
So,
mean, he made Hereditary and Midsummer back to back, and that's an
mm,
amazing for his first film to be Hereditary. So we've got a lot of great, and I even liked Beau is Afraid, to be honest, but it was a little too long. But yeah, that's that horror renaissance we're having right now, and I'm all here for it.
yeah, I can 100% say since I watched that movie, I've started to venture into other movies that A24 has brought out, and I haven't seen a horrible movie yet. Some
Yeah,
that are kind of yeah, kind of sketchy. Like, okay, I've seen it. I don't think I need to see it a second time. But you know, at the same time, I legitimately have not seen a bad movie that they turned out yet.
Yeah, I
I'm sure there
agree.
probably are. I didn't realize just how many movies that they have under their umbrella right now. But it's like 70 some odd movies, and supposedly they've got like 5 or 6 more coming out this year alone. So
Yeah, did you watch Talk to Me yet?
not yet. I haven't.
You'll probably like it. I think it was just masterfully done. I watched it twice in a row, just boom, boom, back to back. It's really good.
See, and to me, if a movie can do that to me, then that says a lot
Yeah,
because in this day and age, especially with everything being at our disposal like it is, it's so hard to captivate me to that level where it's like I just invested 2 hours watching a movie and oh no, back to square one and we're going to do
yeah,
it again.
yeah,
Normally it's 2 hours on to the next one.
exactly. Yeah. No, they've got good
So
stuff. So, what a time to be alive for horror fans. We got our whole separate horror channel too with Shutter, which is nice. So,
I when they launched Shutter, that was one of the very first things I ever did was sign up
mm,
and get an account because I was like, this is finally like you get the whole Netflix has some horror, Paramount has some horror, HBO has some horror, what it, but that's what Shutter is though is
yeah.
top to bottom 100%. It's horror. I know there's even a couple other apps that do the same thing as well. So getting to be able to see shows like um, Tales from the Crypt or Creep Show or what I love Tales from the Crypt. I have every season on DVD. So when you said how much you love Tales from the Crypt growing up, it's like, yes, somebody who finally I mean, Amanda gets it too because you know she and I are of the same brain. But you know, I love the great horror, like the TNT drive-in
Yeah.
with Jim Bob,
Joe Bob Briggs. Yeah. Yeah.
Joe Bob Briggs. Yeah,
My
you know what I
other
was talking about.
podcast co-host, he's a big Joe Bob fan.
That a lot of the really campy B horror movies that I saw growing up as a kid, I blame Joe Bob Briggs for because there was a lot of staying up on Friday night, Saturday night, and watching, you know, those movies at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night
Mm.
whenever they ran. So definitely a huge shout out for that as well. Um, so as a whole, so I don't want to, keep everybody too late, but as a whole, if you were to sum up your entire opinion of this movie, what would you have to say about the movie as a whole?
I guess I would say that it has its place in queer cinema for sure. I would say if you like slashers, you have to watch Sleepaway Camp. And if you don't like slashers, you should stay away from it because it's pretty trashy. It really is. So you either kind of like that stuff or not. But mad props to the earnestness of the film, the special effects, and the score. Um, and again, if you're a slasher fan, you gotta watch it if you haven't already.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. There is elements of, like we discussed earlier, the movie where maybe the dialogue might be a little bit cheesy or aggressive in nature, or there might be elements of the movie that are cringy or things of that nature. But as a whole, it's really actually a well done movie that it's one of the if in this day and age if you can make me stop and think that wow, it's been several months since I've seen Sleepaway Camp, I need to put that in the DVD player and watch it,
Yeah.
then that says something.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It is definitely rewatchable. Again, some people it's just gonna be offensive and they are not gonna want to touch it. and that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's I. There are people that I know that I don't honestly think would appreciate it, and it's not something that I would go out of my way to try and
Yeah.
force on them,
Yeah. Yeah.
because at the end of the day, yeah, it's only an hour and 24 minutes long, but if it's something that you're not going to appreciate, I at the end of that hour and 24 minutes, I don't want you coming back and hating on me for making you watch a movie that
Yeah.
you're not going to enjoy.
I mean, that's just true of horror
So,
films. With a horror film, if you're a horror fan, you need to ask your friend what kind of horror they like, because it's not
mhm.
all the same. Some people there's a joke on Twitter that was like, I don't like anything scarier than Hocus Pocus. So it's like some people just are not gonna want a horror film, and some people are real hardcore and they'll watch almost anything. So, one of the things, I've been a podcaster for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. If you like films, you got to ask your friends what they like. You can't just because you like a movie, you shouldn't force it on someone. You should try to tease out what they like. And that said, when you find somebody who does share your taste, it's so fun to watch together. My oldest kid and I watch a lot of horror movies together, and that's a lot of fun that we have discussing that.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I would love eventually to get to the point where that's something I could share with my nephews when they get older. I also am not dumb enough to know that uh, it won't be for quite a while, because they're a little bit sensitive,
Hmm.
and it's something that I don't think they could handle at the age that I could handle it at.
And
But
also, like, I have a 22-year-old and a kid who's almost 20, and
mhm,
one of them loves horror and the other doesn't like horror at all. So everyone has it's not just your age, it's like what do people
yeah,
like to watch?
no, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with you if you don't like horror movies or don't like being scared. It's not
Yeah,
everybody's cup of tea. I
absolutely.
We have had numerous discussions before with the fact that uh, Amanda loves Titanic. I can't stand Titanic, but you know, I don't hate it as much as other people that we know hate it. But it's not what I enjoy watching, especially for 3.5 hours. So, to each their own. If you like it, good on you.
Yeah.
Don't force me to have to sit down and freaking watch it though. If I'm in the mood to watch it, I'll sit down and watch it. But odds are it ain't going to be kind of happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
So, but if you were to give Sleepaway Camp a rating of
No.
1 to 5, with 1 being horrible and 5 being incredibly awesome, what would you give the movie?
I guess as the quality of the film is like a 3, but if you like slashers, it's a 5 out of 5.
I can, yeah, I can agree with that. So with that said, I'll go in between with the median score, and I'll go 4 out of 5 total,
Yeah.
just for the perfect, like you said. Um, Overall quality, yeah, it might be a little bit further down on the spectrum than you know other movies, but at the same time, for me, I still love the movie. So you get the high end of the spectrum, which it all evens out in
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah. No, I hear
So
you.
definitely, I highly okay. So if you love horror and have not seen Sleepaway Camp, we highly recommend you go and check it out. Like I said earlier, it's on Peacock, it's on Tubi, it's on Plex. If you want to venture out there and spend $3.99 to rent it, go rent it. Whatever the case may be. Uh, if you're open minded and love horror, I think you might enjoy it.
Yeah.
If not, uh, run.
Yeah, I agree. Watch the Titanic
For lack
instead.
of a better term, run.
Yeah,
It won't be your cup of tea, and you won't enjoy it. So definitely there is all of that. So
right on.
that was definitely really a fast hour. I can't believe it went by so fast. 100% though, before we wrap up everything on the show, I have to thank the listeners for being here each and every week. You guys are incredibly amazing. You guys are the reason why we're 200 and some odd episodes into the show, and 3 years later, still doing the show. You guys are awesome. You guys are incredible. You guys keep me plugging along each and every week, turning out episodes that hopefully you guys are enjoying. Obviously, you're enjoying it because our listenership continues to grow at a steady pace. So
Nice.
thank you for that as well.
Right on.
Um, Definitely thank you to Agni for being here and making her debut on the show. You are more than welcome to come back anytime that you would like and discuss more amazing movies with us. I feel
Awesome.
like this was a lot of fun, and I feel like we could do so much more great content
Well, definitely
going
invite me
down the
back
road.
for any horror that you do. I'm always down for a horror chat. And I watched a little bit of you and your other hosts, and it looked like a lot of fun. So, yeah, glad to be here.
We try our best to have as much fun as possible and not take ourselves too seriously.
Hmm.
So sometimes we might get a little bit over the line, but you have to have fun. If you're not having fun and being entertaining, then why are the listeners coming back each and every week to listen to you?
Right on.
So, um, would you like to remind the listeners about all the stuff that you got out there that you would like to share? And
Yeah, sure.
all,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, I'm just going to remind everybody also everything that you share, I will be putting up in the show notes and I
Okay.
will be sharing on social media as well. So if you guys are interested in learning more, definitely check that out. But as for all the rest of it, you can let everybody know what's going on, and the floor is
Yeah, so
yours.
I'm probably most active on my Facebook page, which is just B Movie BFFs. But I also have a website, bmoviebffs.com. And I have another podcast called Beauty Beast and the Bees, and that's bbnbs.net. So mostly I talk about horror, love to talk about horror. Just a reminder, my pronouns are they, them, and not she, her. And if you've got horror opinions, and also a little side note, I also love British sci-fi and British television. So if you come find me on Facebook, like that's the kind of stuff I like to talk about. And of course, I do occasionally watch actual good films as well, not just B movies. So, Kasey, thank you for having me and talking about this super fun film. And it's been a great way to close out my Friday.
There's always need to close out Fridays in amazing ways, and again, you are welcome for the invitation. You are welcome to come back anytime you want. I feel like we did a good episode. I feel like the listeners are going to enjoy the discussion, and I feel like we definitely have a good rapport. So definitely would love to have you back when I can get Amanda here as well,
Right on.
so we can do some more discussions with more than just the two of us.
Sounds good.
So um, as for stuff coming up for the foreseeable future, we are smack dab in the middle of movies that everybody should see once in their lifetime. Sleepaway Camp. Uh, as well in May, we will be looking at a handful of iconic superhero movies, and then this summer we will be discussing the epic movies of the year 1984 for the entire summer because
Oh, nice.
all those movies turned 40 years old this year. And at the end of the day, if you've done the research, you know that there was some awesome, awesome movies that came out that year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So definitely, we'll be discussing anywhere from 8 to 12 movies in that theme. And at the end of the day, whatever we end up doing, I can guarantee you there'll be stuff that doesn't get discussed that deserves to get discussed as well. So stay tuned for all of that. And then at the end of the day, um, one last time, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Agni, for being here. And we hope you guys all come back for an evening at the movies. Have a good week, guys.